She was 9 years
Get this
old,
piece of
sitting in
trash
an airport
off my
security
plane, you
office,
monkey.
clutching an empty velvet box with trembling hands. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to explain what had happened. The flight attendant had taken it, the last gift her father ever gave her, the only thing she had left of him. And when she asked for it back, the woman looked her in the eyes and said she was lying. But this isn't a story about what was taken from Maya Chen. This is a story about what they didn't know she had inside her. The courage, the determination, the unshakable belief that her father had planted in her heart before he took his last breath. This is about how a little girl brought an entire system to its knees, not with violence or vengeance, but with something far more powerful: the truth. Let me take you back to where it all began. 3 months before that terrible flight. 3 months before the theft that would change everything. Maya Chen was 9 years old, small for her age, with her father's dimples and her mother's determination written in every line of her intelligent dark eyes. She was the kind of child who noticed things other people missed, who remembered details with the precision of a photograph. Her mixed Asian and Black heritage gave her a unique perspective on the world, though she was still too young to fully understand why some people treated her differently because of it. Her father, Dr. David Chen, was a brilliant aerospace engineer. The kind of man who could explain the physics of flight in a way that made it sound like magic, who built model planes with his daughter every Sunday in his cluttered workshop that smelled of wood glue and possibility. He had a laugh that filled rooms and a way of making Maya feel like she could do anything, be anything, accomplish anything she set her mind to. They had a tradition: adventure days. Every Saturday, David would wake Maya up early, and they'd go somewhere new. A museum, a hiking trail, the beach at sunrise. He called her his little explorer, and together they'd mapped out dreams bigger than the sky itself. David had a notebook where he kept coordinates of all the places they'd been and all the places they still wanted to go.
Russia, Japan,
New Zealand, Madagascar. The whole world was waiting for them. Until it wasn't. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors said the words, but Maya didn't really understand what they meant until she saw her mother's face crumble. Until she watched her father, the strongest man she'd ever known, become smaller and more fragile with each passing week. Jennifer Chen was an ER nurse, someone who saved lives for a living, and yet she couldn't save the one that mattered most. The helplessness in her eyes was something Maya had never seen before, and it terrified her more than anything else. The hospital became their second home. Maya would go to school, then her mother would pick her up and drive straight to the sterile white room where her father lay connected to machines that beeped and hummed with mechanical indifference. She'd climb into the bed beside him, careful of the tubes and wires, and read to him from her favorite books. Sometimes he was awake enough to listen. Sometimes he'd drift off mid-sentence, his breathing shallow and labored. But even as the cancer devoured him from the inside out, David Chen never stopped being her father. Never stopped trying to prepare her for a world he wouldn't be in. During one of his better days, maybe 3 weeks before the end, he asked Jennifer to help him sit up. His hands shook as he gestured for Maya to come closer. His voice was barely a whisper, but his eyes still held that familiar sparkle. "Maya Bird," he said, using the nickname he'd given her when she was 3 years old and obsessed with the idea of flying. "I need to tell you something important." She nodded, holding his hand, trying not to cry at how thin and cold his fingers felt. "I'm not going to be here much longer. And I know that's scary. It's scary for me too. But I need you to know something. Death isn't the end of love. Love continues. Love finds ways to stay. Daddy, please don't. Let me finish. I've been working on something for you. A gift. And I want you to promise me something. I want you to promise me that you'll be brave. That you'll stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. The world isn't always kind, sweetheart. Sometimes people will try to make you small because of how you look or where you come from. But you're not small. You're mighty. You're a Chen, and Chens don't back down from the truth." Maya nodded through her tears, not fully understanding but memorizing every word like gospel. 2 days later, a jeweler arrived at the hospital. An elderly man with gentle hands and a kind smile. He carried a small velvet box, which he handed to David with the reverence of someone delivering something sacred. David's hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a locket, but not just any locket. It was a work of art. Rose gold, about the size of a silver dollar, with intricate engravings of clouds and airplanes dancing across its surface. When David opened it, a delicate mechanism inside began to play somewhere over the rainbow, the song he used to sing to Maya when she couldn't sleep. But the magic went deeper. Inside the locket was a holographic photograph, the kind that shifted depending on the angle you looked at it. From one view, it showed Maya and David in his workshop, both covered in sawdust, laughing at some shared joke. From another angle, it showed them at the beach, her on his shoulders, both silhouetted against the sunset. And from a third angle, it showed just David's face, smiling with all the love a father could hold, with tiny words engraved beneath. "Fly high, Maya bird. I'm always with you." The inside also held something else. Coordinates. Numbers etched in precise lines along the inner rim. The coordinates of all the places they'd planned to visit together. All the adventures they'd never take. "This isn't goodbye," David whispered as he fastened the locket around Maya's neck with Jennifer's help. "This is a promise. Every time you travel, every time you see something beautiful, every time you do something brave, I'm there with you. These coordinates, they're our unfinished adventures. And I need you to take them for both of us."
Can you do that?
"Yes, Daddy. And promise me one more thing. The first time you fly by yourself, the first time you spread your wings without me, you wear this. You wear it and you remember that you're never really alone." Maya promised. 2 days later, David Chen closed his eyes for the last time. Jennifer was holding one hand. Maya was holding the other. And in her final memory of her father, he smiled. Just a little. Like he could see something beautiful that they couldn't yet. The funeral was a blur. People Maya had never met told her how sorry they were for her loss, as if sorry could fill the hole that had opened up in her chest. As if words could bring him back. She wore the locket every day. Touched it whenever she felt scared or sad. Listened to the music box when the world felt too heavy. It became her lifeline, the physical proof that her father had existed, that he had loved her, that she hadn't imagined the best parts of her life. 6 weeks after the funeral, Jennifer got the call that every daughter dreads. Her mother, Helen, Maya's grandmother, had suffered a stroke in Seattle. She was alive but needed immediate care and support. Jennifer didn't hesitate. She booked a flight that same day. But there's a problem. Maya had her science fair presentation that week. She'd been working on it for months, a project about aerodynamics and the physics of flight, her tribute to everything her father had taught her. It was important to her in a way that went beyond grades or recognition. It was her way of honoring him, of showing that his lessons hadn't died with him. Jennifer was torn. She couldn't leave her mother alone in a hospital in another state. But she couldn't miss her daughter's presentation either. It was Helen herself who provided the solution during a difficult phone call, her words slurred but firm. "Let Maya finish her week. Then put her on a plane. She'll be fine. She's stronger than you think." Jennifer wasn't convinced. "Mom, she's 9 years old. She's never flown alone. Her father was a pilot of dreams. Flying is in her blood. And she needs to learn that she can do hard things. That she can survive without us hovering. Besides, didn't David make her promise something about her first solo flight?" Jennifer remembered. The locket. The promise. She looked at Maya, who had been listening to the whole conversation with those sharp, observant eyes. "I can do it, Mom," Maya said quietly. "I promised Daddy I'd be brave." And so it was decided. Maya would stay with a neighbor for the week, finish her presentation, and then fly as an unaccompanied minor to Seattle for spring break. Jennifer would be there waiting for her at the other end. The preparation was meticulous. Jennifer went over every single detail with Maya. How to check in, how to go through security, how to find her gate, what to do if something went wrong. She programmed the neighbor's number, her own number, and Helen's number into Maya's phone with stern instructions to call every single hour. Maya packed her small purple backpack with care. A change of clothes. Her tablet loaded with books and games. Snacks. a water bottle, and in the front pocket, secured with a zipper, the velvet box containing her locket. She had debated wearing it on the plane, but something made her want to keep it safe, protected, until they were actually in the air. Like she was saving it for the moment she needed it most. The morning of the flight, Jennifer drove Maya to San Francisco International Airport. The whole way there, she kept giving instructions, kept checking and rechecking that Maya had everything she needed. By the time they pulled up to the departures terminal, Maya could see the barely concealed panic in her mother's eyes. "Mom, I'll be okay. I promise." "I know, baby. I know you will. But if anything feels wrong, anything at all, you find an adult, and you ask for help. You hear me?" "I hear you." They checked in together, and an airline representative attached a lanyard to Maya's backpack with a badge that read "Unaccompanied Minor" in big letters. The gate agent who processed her paperwork was a kind older black woman named Mrs. Patterson, who seemed to sense Maya's nervousness. "First time flying alone, sweetheart?" Maya nodded. "You're going to do just fine. I can tell. You've got brave eyes." Jennifer hugged her daughter so tight Maya could barely breathe. "I love you. Call me the second you land." "I will. I love you too." And then Maya was walking toward security, turning back every few steps to wave at her mother, until finally Jennifer disappeared from view, and Maya was truly on her own. She went through the security checkpoint, put her backpack on the conveyor belt, walked through the metal detector. On the other side, she reclaimed her bag and checked the front pocket. The velvet box was still there. Safe. The airport was overwhelming. So many people rushing in every direction, announcements echoing overhead, the smell of coffee and fast food mixing with jet fuel and humanity. Maya checked her gate number 3 times to make sure she had it right. Gate 47B. She had an hour before boarding. She found a seat near the windows where she could watch the planes take off and land, these massive metal birds defying gravity the way her father had explained to her 100 times. She thought about him now, wondered if he was watching, if he was proud. She touched the outline of the box through her backpack and felt a little less alone. Boarding began 30 minutes later. Maya presented her ticket and unaccompanied minor badge, and a flight attendant with a clipboard smiled at her. "Maya Chen? Okay, sweetheart, follow me. I'll get you settled in your seat." The attendant who escorted her onto the plane was young, maybe in his 20s, with kind eyes and an easy smile. His name tag read James. "Have you flown before?" he asked as they walked down the jet bridge. "Yes, but not alone." "Well, you're doing great. Your seat is in row 32. If you need anything at all during the flight, you just press this button right here, okay? And I'll come check on you a couple times to make sure you're doing all right." "Thank you." The plane was already half full. Maya made her way down the narrow aisle, her backpack bumping against seats, until she found 32B. Middle seat. She tucked her backpack carefully under the seat in front of her, buckled herself in, and took a deep breath. She could do this. Her father believed she could do this. The seat next to her was empty for now, but an elderly man was sitting by the window. He was maybe 70, with white hair and gentle wrinkles that suggested a lifetime of smiling. He glanced over at Maya and nodded hello. "First time flying solo?" he asked, his voice warm. "How did you know?" "I was a teacher for 40 years. You develop a sense for these things. I'm Bernard, by the way. Mr. Bernard if you want to be formal, but Bernard works just fine." "I'm Maya." "Pleasure to meet you, Maya. Where are you headed?"
Seattle.
"My grandmother had a stroke. My mom's already there." "I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sure your grandmother is lucky to have you coming to visit." More passengers filed in. A young couple arguing quietly about carry-on space. A businessman already on his phone despite the instruction to put devices in airplane mode. A mother trying to wrangle 2 small children who seemed determined to make this everyone else's problem. And then she appeared. The flight attendant who would change everything. Veronica Whitmore was in her late 30s, though she'd probably claim early 30s if asked. She had the kind of sharp, angular beauty that looked good in photographs but cold in person. Blonde hair pulled back in a perfect bun. Immaculate makeup. A smile that was all teeth and no warmth. Her uniform was crisp, her movements efficient, and something about her radiated a barely concealed impatience with the world around her. Maya noticed how Veronica's demeanor changed depending on who she was talking to. With the business-class passengers still filing past, she was all charm and attentiveness. "Let me help you with that, sir. Can I get you a drink before we take off?" But with the economy passengers, especially those who looked like they might be difficult or needy, her smile became thinner, more forced. Veronica made her way down the aisle, checking overhead bins, reminding people to put their seats upright. When she got to Maya's row, she barely glanced at her before moving on. Just another passenger. Just another child to keep from being disruptive. The plane filled up completely. A woman in her 40s settled into the aisle seat next to Maya, giving her a warm smile before immediately putting in earbuds and closing her eyes. The captain's voice came over the intercom with the standard welcome message, "Flight time. Weather in Seattle." Maya felt her heart start to race. This was it. She was really doing this. As the plane pushed back from the gate and began to taxi, Maya gripped the armrests. Mr. Bernard noticed. "Nervous about takeoff?" "A little. I'll let you in on a secret. I've flown hundreds of times, and I still get a little flutter right here." He patted his stomach. "But you know what I do? I count backwards from 100 by sevens. By the time you get to 50, you're already in the air. Want to try?" Maya nodded. They counted together in whispers as the plane accelerated down the runway. 100. 93. 86. The nose lifted. 79. The ground fell away. 72. They were flying. Maya looked out the window past Mr. Bernard and watched San Francisco shrink beneath them. The Golden Gate Bridge looked like a toy. The ocean stretched to the horizon. Her father had been right. From up here, everything looked different. Smaller. More manageable. Like all the heavy things on the ground couldn't quite reach you when you were touching the clouds. She touched her backpack with her foot, feeling for the reassuring weight of the velvet box. It was still there. In a few minutes, once they reached cruising altitude, she'd take it out. She'd put the locket on. She'd fulfill her promise. The seatbelt sign dinged off. People immediately started moving around, pulling out tablets and books, reclining their seats. Veronica appeared in the aisle with a beverage cart, James pushing from the other end. Maya could hear Veronica's interactions as she moved up the rows. Professional but curt. When someone asked for something not on the cart, her sighs were audible. When a passenger asked a question about the flight time, her answer was clipped, annoyed. "I already announced that. We'll be landing at 1:15 local time." James, by contrast, was patient and kind with everyone. He joked with a little boy about whether ginger ale could give you superpowers. He helped an elderly woman reach her bag in the overhead bin without making her feel like a burden. The difference between them was stark. When they reached Maya's row, Veronica barely looked at her. "What would you like to drink? Apple juice, please?" Veronica sighed, not even trying to hide her irritation. "We're out of apple juice." James, from the other side of the cart, glanced over. "We have some in the back, Veronica. I can grab it." "She can have something else. We're busy." Maya felt her face flush with embarrassment. Orange juice is fine." Veronica slapped a cup of orange juice on Maya's tray table hard enough that some sloshed over the side. Then she moved on without another word. Mr. Bernard frowned, but said nothing. He waited until Veronica was out of earshot before leaning over to Maya. "Don't let people like that make you feel small, young lady. Some folks are just carrying around their own misery and spreading it everywhere they go." Maya nodded, but the interaction had shaken her confidence. She'd felt invisible, unimportant, like a burden for simply existing on this plane. She reached down to get the velvet box, deciding she needed the comfort of her father's gift now more than ever. Her hand found her backpack, and she carefully unzipped the front pocket. But as she pulled the box out, the plane hit a patch of turbulence. It wasn't severe, just enough to cause drinks to slosh and bags to shift. Just enough that Maya's backpack slid forward suddenly, pulled by the weight of her tablet inside. The velvet box slipped from her fingers, fell to the floor, and popped open. The locket tumbled out, catching the overhead light. It was beautiful, gleaming rose gold, the engraved airplanes dancing across its surface. It rolled slightly forward, coming to rest just beyond Maya's reach under the seat in front of her. Maya unbuckled quickly, leaning down to get it, but at that exact moment, Veronica was walking back up the aisle. She saw the locket on the floor before Maya could reach it, and something changed in Veronica's expression. Maya saw it. The way her eyes locked onto the locket, the way her mouth tightened, the way she moved, suddenly purposeful, suddenly focused. Veronica crouched down, blocking Maya, and picked up the locket. She turned it over in her hands, and Maya saw recognition flash across her face. Recognition of value. Recognition of something expensive that didn't belong in economy class in the hands of a child. "Oh, let me help you with that, sweetie," Veronica said, and her voice had changed. Suddenly dripped with false sweetness, the kind of tone adults use when they're talking to children they don't actually like, but need to appear kind in front of others. Maya reached out. "Thank you, can I?" But Veronica held the locket just out of reach, examining it more closely. She opened it. The music began to play, that delicate, haunting melody. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, the holographic photograph shifted in the light. Maya. David. A moment of love frozen in gold and glass. "This is quite expensive," Veronica said, and her tone had shifted again. Less sweet now. More calculating. "Does your mother know you have this?" "My daddy gave it to me before he died," Maya said, her voice small but urgent. "Can I have it back, please?" Veronica's eyes flicked to Maya's face, and Maya saw something in them she'd seen before. The same look she'd gotten from some kids at school, from some parents at the playground, from that woman at the grocery store who'd followed her mother around as if they were going to steal something. It was judgment, assessment, a decision being made about who Maya was based on nothing but what Veronica saw. "Sweetie, I think it would be better if I keep this safe for you up in the galley. You might lose it during the flight, and then your mother would be very upset with you." Maya's stomach dropped. "No, thank you. I'll keep it with me. My mom knows I have it. She helped me pack it. I really think it's mine," Maya said, more firmly now. "Please give it back." Veronica stood up, still holding the locket. Her mask of false kindness had slipped, and now her face showed pure annoyance. "Little girl, I'm trying to help you. This is expensive jewelry. If something happens to it, it will be your responsibility. As an airline employee, I'm authorized to hold valuable items for safekeeping for unaccompanied minors." Mr. Bernard leaned forward. "Excuse me, miss, but the child said it's hers. Her father gave it to her. I think she should be the one to decide." Veronica's eyes snapped to him, cold and sharp. "Sir, I appreciate your concern, but airline policy is clear. Unaccompanied minors with valuable items are required to have those items secured by crew. I'm following protocol." Maya knew, with the certainty that children sometimes have, that this was a lie. Her mother had told her about unaccompanied minor policies. Nothing about giving up her belongings. Nothing about staff taking her things. "What protocol?" Maya asked. "Can you show me?" Veronica's jaw tightened. For a moment, something dangerous flashed in her eyes. Then she leaned down, close enough that Maya could smell her perfume, cloying and sweet. "I'll keep this safe for you, and you'll get it back when we land and your guardian picks you up at the gate. That's final. Now I need you to return to your seat and buckle up. We're still experiencing turbulence." She closed her hand around the locket and started to walk away. Maya unbuckled and stood up. "Wait. You can't just take it. That's stealing." Several passengers turned to look. Veronica stopped, her shoulders tensing. When she turned back around, her smile was tight and completely false. "Sweetie, lower your voice. You're causing a disturbance. You're stealing from me." Maya's voice cracked, tears starting to well up. "My dad died. That's all I have of him. You can't. Sit down. Now." The sweetness was completely gone from Veronica's voice now. It was a command, a threat. Mr. Bernard stood up, his face troubled. "Ma'am, I really think you should return the child's property." I don't believe there's any policy that requires. Sir, sit down, or I will have to report disruptive behavior to the captain. Both of you. James appeared from the galley, looking confused. Veronica, what's going on? Nothing. Just an unaccompanied minor being difficult. I've got it handled. But James had seen the locket in Veronica's hand, had heard Maya crying. His expression shifted, uncertainty crossing his young face. Maybe we should just give it back to her? James, did I ask for your opinion? Go check on first class. But now, James. He hesitated, looking at Maya's tear-streaked face, at Mr. Bernard's protective stance, at Veronica's barely controlled rage. Maya could see him weighing his options. He was new. Veronica was senior. Going against her could cost him. His hesitation lasted only a second, but in that second, Maya saw him make his choice. Sorry, he mumbled, not looking at anyone, and he retreated to the front of the plane. Maya felt betrayal join her panic. The one person who seemed kind, who might have helped, had just walked away. Last warning, Veronica said quietly. Sit down and stop making a scene, or when we land, you'll be met by security for disrupting a flight. Is that what you want? To be in trouble when your poor, sick grandmother is waiting for you. The threat was clear, specific, designed to terrify a 9-year-old traveling alone.
And it worked.
Maya felt her courage crumble. She was small, alone, thousands of feet in the air with nowhere to go and no one to help her. Her mother was hundreds of miles away.
Her father was dead.
And this woman had just stolen the last piece of him she had. She sat down, tears streaming silently down her face. Mr. Bernard put a gentle hand on her shoulder. We'll sort this out when we land, sweetheart. I promise. I saw what happened. I'll be your witness. But Maya barely heard him. She watched Veronica walk back to the galley, the locket disappearing into her pocket.
Just like that. Gone.
The rest of the flight was a blur of misery. Maya couldn't eat the snack they brought around, couldn't focus on the tablet, couldn't stop crying quietly into her sleeve. Mr. Bernard tried to comfort her, told her stories, did card tricks to distract her, but nothing worked. The woman next to her in the aisle seat had woken up and asked what was wrong, and when Mr. Bernard explained, she'd been horrified. That's theft. Someone needs to report her. I plan to, Mr. Bernard said grimly. Another passenger, a Latina woman named Carmen sitting across the aisle, had been watching the whole thing. She leaned over. I saw it too. I'm recording this on my phone right now just in case we need evidence. That woman was completely out of line. But recording after the fact didn't help Maya get her locket back. Didn't stop the hollow ache in her chest that grew with every passing minute. She pressed her face against the seat in front of her and tried to remember what her father had told her. About being brave. About standing up for what's right. But she was 9 years old on an airplane with a woman who had all the power and none of the mercy, and she didn't know how to fight that. When the captain announced their descent into Seattle, Maya felt sick. In a few minutes, she'd have to walk off this plane and face her grandmother without the one thing that mattered most. How could she explain that she'd failed? That she'd let someone take it? That she hadn't been brave enough or strong enough or smart enough to stop it? The plane landed. Passengers began gathering their belongings, eager to deplane. Maya sat frozen in her seat, watching as Veronica moved up and down the aisle, helping people with bags, smiling that false smile, acting like she hadn't just destroyed a little girl's world. Finally, everyone else had deplaned. As protocol dictated, Maya had to wait for flight attendant to escort her off. Veronica appeared with a clipboard and that same sickeningly sweet smile. Okay, Maya, let's get you to your grandmother. Maya looked up at her with red, swollen eyes. My locket. You said you'd give it back when we landed. What locket? The words hit Maya like a physical blow.
What?
The locket you took. The one in the velvet box. The one my dad. Sweetheart, I don't know what you're talking about. I never took any locket from you. Veronica's voice was calm. Reasonable. The voice of someone telling the truth. Maya felt the world tilt. You're lying. You took it. You said you'd keep it safe and give it back. Honey, you're very upset. Maybe you lost it during the flight? Or maybe you left it at home. I never took anything from you. You did. Mr. Bernard saw you. And Carmen. And James. Veronica crouched down, and when she spoke, her voice was low enough that no one else could hear. Who do you think they're going to believe? A confused little girl or a 15-year airline veteran? You need to be very careful about making false accusations. They can get you into serious trouble. Maya couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This couldn't be happening. Adults weren't supposed to lie like this. Weren't supposed to steal and then pretend they didn't. Her whole understanding of how the world worked was crumbling. Veronica stood back up, her voice returning to normal volume. Come on now. We need to go. Your grandmother is waiting. She took Maya's arm, not roughly but firmly, and led her off the plane. Maya's legs felt like they didn't belong to her. She walked in a daze through the jet bridge, into the terminal, still clutching the empty velvet box. At the gate, a male agent was waiting, the same one who'd processed Maya's check-in information. Veronica handed him paperwork. Any problems with the flight? He asked. None at all. She did great. Veronica smiled at Maya, and the cruelty in that smile made Maya want to scream. Maya found her voice. She stole my necklace. My locket. My dad gave it to me before he died, and she took it. The gate agent looked startled, then uncomfortable. He glanced at Veronica, who shook her head with an expression of practiced sympathy. The poor thing has been very emotional the whole flight. Kept talking about her father, who passed away. I think the stress of traveling alone was too much for her. She's confused. I'm not confused. You took it. You said you'd keep it safe, and then you lied, and said you didn't take it. The gate agent's expression shifted to something closer to pity. Miss Whitmore is a 15-year veteran with an exemplary record. I'm sure there's been some kind of misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding. She's lying. Young lady, you need to calm down. The gate agent's tone was gentle but firm, the way you talk to someone having an irrational episode. Making false accusations is very serious. Miss Whitmore is trying to help you. At that moment, Maya heard her name being called. She turned to see her grandmother, Helen, being wheeled up to the gate by an airport attendant. Helen looked smaller than Maya remembered, one side of her face slightly drooping from the stroke, but her eyes were as fierce as ever. Grandma! Maya broke away from Veronica and ran to her, collapsing into her lap, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. Helen's good arm wrapped around her, and her voice, though slightly slurred, was strong. What's wrong? Maya, what happened? Through gasping sobs, Maya told her everything. About the turbulence. About the locket falling. About Veronica taking it and refusing to give it back. About the lies. About feeling small and powerless and like the world had proven that her father was wrong, that being brave didn't matter, that justice was a fairy tale for people with power. Helen's face darkened as she listened. When Maya finished, Helen looked up at the gate agent with eyes that could cut steel. My granddaughter says your employee stole from her. A locket her dead father gave her as his last gift. I want to speak to a supervisor. Now. The gate agent shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but I'm not upset. I'm furious. My son just died. That locket is irreplaceable. It has his photo in it. His voice. Coordinates he wanted his daughter to visit. If your employee stole it, I want it returned, and I want her arrested. Veronica, who'd been standing to the side looking bored, stepped forward. Mrs. Chen, I completely understand how difficult this time must be for your family. But I never took anything from Maya. She's been very emotional and confused during the flight. Perhaps she misplaced it, or perhaps she didn't bring it at all and forgot. Grief does strange things to memory. The condescension in her voice made Maya's blood boil. I didn't forget. You took it. You put it in your pocket. I saw you. Sweetheart, I think you're very tired and very sad, and you're not remembering things correctly. Helen's jaw clenched. Don't you dare talk to my granddaughter like she's crazy. Maya has a photographic memory. If she says you took it, you took it. I want her bag searched. I want the plane searched. I want security involved. Right now. The gate agent was looking increasingly flustered. Ma'am, we can't search an employee without probable cause. That would be a violation of her rights. If you'd like to file a report. A report? A report? While she walks away with stolen property. Veronica's expression hardened. Mrs. Chen, I've tried to be patient and understanding, but you're now making serious accusations that could damage my career. I never took anything from your granddaughter. If you continue to harass me, I'll have no choice but to report this incident to my supervisor as passenger misconduct. Please do, Helen snapped. And while you're at it, have them call security. Because we're not leaving until this is resolved. The standoff was interrupted by the arrival of an airport security officer. Officer Rodriguez was in his 40s, with the tired eyes of someone who'd seen it all and didn't want to see any more. He looked at the assembled group with the weariness of a man who knew this was going to take the rest of his shift. What seems to be the problem? Everyone started talking at once. The gate agent trying to downplay it. Helen insisting on theft. Maya crying. Veronica maintaining her innocence with perfect calm. Officer Rodriguez held up a hand. One at a time. Let's start with the child. Sweetheart, can you tell me what happened? Maya tried to compose herself. She walked Officer Rodriguez through the whole thing, describing the locket in detail, explaining exactly when and how Veronica had taken it, what she'd said, how she'd refused to give it back. And you're certain you brought this locket on the plane?
Yes.
It was in my backpack. In a velvet box. In the front pocket. And you saw this employee take it?
Yes.
And Mr. Bernard saw it too. And Carmen. And James, the other flight attendant. Officer Rodriguez turned to Veronica. Ma'am, do you have any knowledge of this locket? No, officer. The child was very emotional during the flight. I tried to be kind and patient with her, but she became increasingly agitated. I never saw any locket. I certainly never took anything from her. Would you be willing to be searched? Veronica's eyes flashed with indignation. Absolutely not. I have rights, and I'm not going to be treated like a criminal because a grieving child is confused. I've been with this airline for 15 years. I have an exemplary record. This is insulting. Officer Rodriguez sighed. Ma'am, I understand your position, but if the child's family files a formal complaint, then let them file it. But unless you have actual evidence or witnesses who saw me take something, which you don't, you have no grounds to search me or detain me. I have another flight to prepare for. Am I free to go? She was calling his bluff, and everyone knew it. Officer Rodriguez looked at Maya, at her tear-stained face and empty velvet box, and his expression was genuinely sympathetic. But sympathy wasn't evidence. Wasn't proof. You're free to go. But I'd advise you to stay available in case the investigation requires your statement. Of course. Veronica picked up her bag and walked away without a backward glance, leaving Maya staring after her in disbelief. Helen was shaking with rage. So that's it? She just gets to walk away? With my granddaughter's property. Ma'am, without witnesses or physical evidence, my hands are tied. The employee has denied any wrongdoing. You can file a report with the police and with the airline, but right now there's nothing more I can do here. What about the witnesses my granddaughter mentioned? The other passengers? The other flight attendant? We can try to locate them. Can you provide names or seat numbers? Maya tried to remember. Mr. Bernard was in 32A, and Carmen was across the aisle. And James, his name tag said James. Officer Rodriguez made notes. I'll see what I can do. But ma'am, I want to be honest with you. Cases like this are very difficult to prove. It often comes down to one person's word against another's. And without physical evidence. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The message was clear, a 9-year-old's word against a veteran employee. Guess who wins? Helen refused to accept it. She insisted they file a report right there in the airport. Officer Rodriguez walked them to a security office where Maya had to go through the whole story again for another officer who typed it up with a slow, methodical pace of someone who'd filed 1,000 reports and knew most of them went nowhere. By the time they were finished, 2 hours had passed. Maya was exhausted, hollowed out, clutching the empty velvet box like it was a life raft. Helen was fuming and frustrated. And Veronica was somewhere in this airport, probably on another plane by now, with her father's locket in her pocket. As they left the airport, Helen made a promise. "We're not letting this go, Maya. I don't care how long it takes or what we have to do. We're getting that locket back." But Maya wasn't sure she believed her. The world had just taught her a brutal lesson. Sometimes the bad guys win. Sometimes being right doesn't matter. Sometimes justice is just a word adults use to make children feel better about a fundamentally unfair world. That night, in her grandmother's small apartment, Maya lay awake staring at the ceiling. Her mother had called, frantic with worry and guilt. Maya had tried to explain, but the words kept getting stuck. How do you tell your mother that you failed? That you let someone steal the last piece of your father? That you weren't brave enough or smart enough to stop it? Jennifer wanted to fly up immediately, but Helen insisted she stay in San Francisco until the weekend. There was nothing she could do here that they weren't already doing. The police had been notified. The airline would be contacted in the morning. They'd figure this out. But as Maya touched the empty space at her throat where the locket should have been, she wondered if her grandmother was lying too. If maybe this was how the world actually worked, and her father had been wrong about everything. She closed her eyes and tried to remember his voice. Tried to hear him telling her to be brave, to fight, to never give up. But all she could hear was Veronica's voice, cold and certain. Who do you think they're going to believe? Morning came too early. Helen made breakfast, but Maya couldn't eat. Jennifer called to check in. Maya went through the motions of conversation, but felt like she was underwater, everything muffled and distant. Helen got on the phone and started making calls. First to the airline's customer service line, where she was transferred 7 times before finally getting someone who claimed to be a supervisor. A woman named Beth who had clearly been trained to handle angry customers with a script designed to sound sympathetic while promising nothing. "Mrs. Chen, I understand your frustration, and I want you to know we take all accusations seriously. We've opened an internal investigation." "Investigation? Your employee stole from my granddaughter. This isn't complicated. I understand you feel that way, but we have to follow proper procedures. We've interviewed Miss Whitmore, and she has denied any wrongdoing. Without additional evidence or witnesses, we have to take her statement into account." "So you're calling my granddaughter a liar?" "Not at all. We're simply saying that there are 2 different versions of events, and without additional evidence, we cannot take disciplinary action against an employee. My husband just died. That locket contained his last message to his daughter. You understand that, right? This isn't about money. It's about a dying father's gift to his child. I'm very sorry for your loss, Mrs. Chen. Truly. But our hands are tied without proof. The proof is that your employee has the locket. Search her home. Search her locker. Do something. We don't have the authority to do that without a warrant, and we wouldn't have grounds for a warrant without evidence. I'm very sorry, but there's nothing more we can do at this time." Helen hung up, her hand shaking with rage. She looked at Maya, and for the first time, Maya saw defeat in her grandmother's eyes. But Maya didn't feel defeated anymore. She felt something else building inside her. Something hot and sharp and focused. Her father had taught her to solve puzzles, to look for patterns, to find evidence when everyone else saw nothing. She thought about Veronica, about how she'd examined the locket, how her whole demeanor had changed when she saw it, how she'd lie so easily, so perfectly. This wasn't her first time. Maya was certain of it. People didn't lie that well, that completely without practice. "Grandma," Maya said quietly, "if she's done this before, there would be other complaints, right? Other people she's been mean to." Helen looked at her granddaughter with new interest. "That's a very good point. And if she stole the locket because it's valuable, she's probably going to try to sell it somewhere. People don't steal expensive things to keep them. They steal them for money." "Maya, that's very smart thinking. Daddy taught me. He said evidence doesn't lie. So we need to find the evidence. We need witnesses who saw what she did. And we need to prove she has a pattern, that she's done bad things before." Helen smiled, and some of the fire returned to her eyes. Your daddy was a very smart man, and he raised a very smart daughter. Jennifer arrived Friday evening, having gotten another nurse to cover her weekend shifts. When she walked into Helen's apartment and saw Maya, she broke down. They held each other for a long time, and Maya let herself be small again, just for a moment. Let herself be 9 years old and scared and hurting. But when they finally pulled apart, Jennifer saw something new in her daughter's face. A determination that reminded her so much of David it made her heart ache. "We're going to get it back," Maya said. Not a question. A statement of fact. "Baby, I don't know if we can." "We can.
We just have to be smart about it."
"We need a lawyer. And we need to find the people who saw what happened." Helen had already thought of the lawyer part. Her friend's son, Michael Torres, was a civil rights attorney who took cases like this pro bono. Cases about discrimination, about people being treated unfairly because of who they were. She'd called him that morning, and he'd agreed to meet with them Saturday. Michael Torres was 35, with intense dark eyes and the kind of passion that made you believe he really did care about justice, not just winning. He listened to Maya's story without interrupting, taking notes, his expression growing darker as she described Veronica's behavior. When Maya finished, Michael sat back and exhaled slowly.
"Okay.
First, I want you to know that I believe you, Maya. Every word. Second, I want you to know this is going to be hard. Airlines protect their employees, especially veteran employees, because lawsuits are expensive and bad publicity is worse. But third, and most important, I think we can win this." Jennifer leaned forward.
"How?"
"If it's just her word against Maya's." "It's not. There were witnesses. And if we can get them on record, that changes everything. Plus, this isn't just theft. If that flight attendant targeted Maya because of her race, because she assumed a little mixed-race girl in economy class couldn't possibly own expensive jewelry, then this is discrimination. And airlines are terrified of discrimination lawsuits." He looked at Maya. "Sweetheart, I need you to walk me through every detail again." Everything she said.
How she looked at you.
Her tone. The exact words she used. Everything. Maya did. And as she talked, Michael's expression shifted from anger to something calculating. When she got to the part about Veronica saying, "Maybe if your people taught their children proper behavior instead of entitlement," he stopped her. She said, "Your people?"
"Yes."
And then she stopped herself. Like she realized she'd said something wrong. Michael looked at Jennifer and Helen. "That's not just theft. That's racial bias. And if we can prove she has a pattern of treating minority passengers differently, we have a federal case." He filed a formal complaint with the Department of Transportation that afternoon. The complaint detailed not just the theft, but the discrimination. It included Maya's statement, Helen's witness account, and a demand for the airline to produce any previous complaints against Veronica Whitmore. The complaint also threatened a federal lawsuit if the matter wasn't resolved satisfactorily. Michael knew how to play this game. Airlines settled cases like this all the time to avoid the bad publicity. But he also knew they'd fight if they thought they could win. The key was building an undeniable case. While Michael handled the legal side, Detective Lisa Park was working her own angle. She'd been moved by Maya's case from the beginning. Something about the kid's eyes, the way she told her story without embellishment or dramatics. Just facts. Just truth. The detective had kids of her own, and the thought of someone stealing from a grieving 9-year-old made her blood boil. She ran a background check on Veronica Whitmore. No criminal record, but that wasn't surprising. What was interesting were the notes in the airline's internal files, which Michael's complaint had forced them to produce. 2 previous complaints about Veronica, both from minority passengers, both describing her as rude, dismissive, and treating them like they didn't belong. Neither complaint had resulted in any discipline. Both had been marked as personality conflict and closed. Detective Park also did something else. She started looking at Veronica's financial records, or at least what she could access legally. Bank records required a warrant she didn't have grounds for yet. But social media? That was fair game. Veronica's Instagram was semi-private, but enough was visible to paint a picture. She lived well. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry, nice apartment, And 3 weeks ago, she'd posted a story, since expired, but Detective Park had ways of recovering those, showing off some new earrings she'd bought herself as a treat. Detective Park also found something else. Photos from 2 years ago at a pawn shop. Veronica posing with the owner, some kind of anniversary post for a store that had been in the neighborhood for 30 years. In the caption, Veronica mentioned she was a regular customer. Why would a flight attendant with no apparent financial troubles be a regular at a pawn shop? Detective Park started visiting pawn shops in Veronica's neighborhood. The fourth one she tried, the owner recognized Veronica's photo immediately. Sergey was Russian, in his 60s, with the kind of face that suggested he'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by any of it. But he remembered Veronica. Oh yes. She comes in maybe every 2-3 months. Sells jewelry mostly. Sometimes designer handbags. She says they're gifts from ex-boyfriends, from family. I don't ask too many questions. But she is, how do you say, a regular? Do you keep records? Of course. I follow all the laws. He pulled up his computer system and showed Detective Park the transactions. Over the past 2 years, Veronica had sold maybe 15 pieces of jewelry. Gold bracelets, diamond earrings, a Rolex watch, designer items that had netted her several $1,000s total. Did you ever suspect the items might be stolen? Sergey shrugged. She always has ID. She always has story. She seems like a normal person. Maybe she has bad luck with boyfriends who give expensive gifts, yes. He smiled wryly. Did she sell anything recently? In the last week? Sergey checked his records.
No.
Last time she was here was 3 weeks ago. Sold some earrings and a bracelet. Made $300. So she hadn't sold the locket yet, which meant she either still had it, or she'd sold it somewhere else, or she'd hidden it. Detective Park's instincts told her it was still in Veronica's possession. The locket was distinctive, with a holographic photo and music box. It would be difficult to sell, without raising questions. She went back to the station and pulled Veronica's social media again, this time looking more carefully at recent posts.
There.
A mirror selfie from 5 days ago, Veronica showing off her outfit. And in the background, on her dresser, a jewelry box. Detective Park zoomed in as far as the image quality allowed. She couldn't make out specific items, but the jewelry box was clearly full. She brought all of this to Michael Torres. They now had evidence of a pattern. Evidence that Veronica regularly sold jewelry. Evidence that she kept jewelry at home. It wasn't proof that she had Maya's locket, but it was enough for Michael to go back to the judge and request a search warrant. The hearing was brief. Michael presented the evidence. The pattern of complaints. The witness statements he'd collected. The pawn shop records. The social media posts. The judge, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, listened carefully. This is circumstantial, she said. But it's compelling circumstantial. And given the value of the item and the vulnerability of the victim, I'm inclined to grant a limited warrant. Search for jewelry only. No fishing expedition. The warrant was executed on a Wednesday morning, exactly 2 weeks after the flight. Detective Park, accompanied by 2 other Seattle PD officers, knocked on Veronica's door at 7 a.m. Veronica answered in her robe, her perfect hair disheveled, her face slack with sleep. When she saw the police, her expression shifted rapidly. Confusion, then recognition, then anger. What is this? Detective Park held up the warrant. We have authorization to search your residence for stolen property, specifically jewelry matching the description of a locket taken from Maya Chen. This is ridiculous. I already told you people I never took anything. This is harassment. Ma'am, you can read the warrant. We're coming in. Veronica's face went red. I'm calling my union. I'm calling a lawyer. You can't just. We can and we are. You can make those calls, but we're executing this warrant now. They entered the apartment. It was nice. Nicer than a flight attendant's salary should reasonably afford. Hardwood floors. Expensive furniture. Designer everything. Detective Park went straight to the bedroom, to the dresser she'd seen in the social media post. The jewelry box was exactly where it had been in the photo. She opened it carefully, documenting everything with her phone camera. Inside were dozens of pieces.
Rings.
Bracelets. Necklaces. Earrings. Some costume jewelry, but many pieces were clearly expensive. Gold.
Silver. Gems.
And there, nestled among the other pieces, was Maya's locket. Detective Park recognized it immediately from Maya's description. The rose gold. The engraved airplanes. She picked it up carefully with gloved hands and opened it. The music began to play. Somewhere over the rainbow. The holographic photo shifted. Maya and her father, frozen in love and light. Detective Park looked up at Veronica, who had followed them into the bedroom. The flight attendant's face had gone pale. "Can you explain how you came to possess this?" Veronica's mouth opened and closed. That's mine. A gift from my ex-fiancé." "Your ex-fiancé gave you a locket with someone else's photo in it? A photo of a 9-year-old girl and her father? Someone must have broken in. Must have planted it. This is a setup." "Ma'am, there's no sign of forced entry. Your apartment was locked when we arrived. And you're saying someone broke in just to plant evidence in your jewelry box." Veronica's expression was crumbling. "I want a lawyer. I'm not saying anything else." "That's your right." Detective Park sealed the locket in an evidence bag. "Veronica Whitmore, you're under arrest for theft and for filing a false police report. You have the right to remain silent." The Miranda rights echoed through the apartment as Detective Park cuffed her. One of the other officers was already photographing the entire jewelry box as evidence of the larger pattern. As they led Veronica out of the building, a neighbor was getting her morning newspaper. She watched with wide eyes as the police walked the flight attendant to their car in handcuffs. By noon, the local news had picked up the story. Flight attendant arrested for allegedly stealing from grieving child. By evening, it was trending on social media. By the next morning, it had gone national. Michael Torres called a press conference. He stood outside the police station with Jennifer, Helen, and Maya. Camera crews from every local station were there, plus a few national outlets. Maya wore her best dress. The blue one her father had always said matched her eyes. She was terrified but determined. Michael had coached her on what to say, but he'd also told her that the most powerful thing she could do was simply tell the truth. The reporters asked their questions, and Maya answered them in a clear, steady voice that belied her 9 years. She talked about her father, about the locket, about the promise she'd made, about how Veronica had stolen it and lied about it, about how adults hadn't believed her because she was small and brown and alone. "My dad told me to be brave," Maya said, her voice catching slightly but not breaking. "He told me to stand up for what's right even when it's hard. So that's what I'm doing. Because if I just let bad things happen and stay quiet, then what did Daddy teach me for? What was the point?" The clip went viral within hours. The hashtag JusticeForMaya was trending by that evening. People shared their own stories of being treated poorly on flights, of being discriminated against, of not being believed because of who they were. Other passengers from Flight 2847 started coming forward. Mr. Bernard gave a lengthy interview describing exactly what he'd witnessed. Carmen, the paralegal, provided the video she'd taken on her phone. It didn't show the actual theft, but it showed Veronica's hostility, showed Maya crying, showed the clear power dynamic of an adult abusing her authority over a terrified child. And then James, the young flight attendant, finally found his courage. He reached out to Michael Torres through the airline's whistleblower hotline. He was terrified of losing his job, but he couldn't stay silent anymore. "I saw her take it," he said in his statement. "I saw her pocket the locket. I heard Maya asking for it back. I heard Veronica refuse. And I heard her lie about it later. I was too scared to speak up at the time because she's senior, and I'm new, and I thought I'd be fired. But I can't live with myself if I don't tell the truth now. That little girl deserves better. We all do." His statement was the final nail. With James's testimony, there was no more, he said, she said. There was a flight attendant witness who had no reason to lie and everything to lose by telling the truth. The airline went into full crisis mode. The CEO, Patricia Morrison, released a carefully worded statement expressing horror and disappointment at the actions of former employee Veronica Whitmore. The key word being former. Veronica was terminated effective immediately. But Jennifer wasn't satisfied with the termination and a PR statement. Neither was Michael Torres. Your employee stole from a grieving child and your system protected her, Michael said in a follow-up interview. 2 previous complaints were ignored. Multiple passengers witnessed discriminatory behavior and nothing was done. This isn't just about one bad employee. This is about a system that enables bad employees and doesn't protect passengers, especially minority passengers. The pressure mounted. Social media was relentless. News outlets kept the story alive. Consumer advocacy groups joined the chorus. The airline stock price dropped. The board demanded answers. Patricia Morrison agreed to a meeting with the Chen family. Not a phone call. Not a video conference. An in-person meeting at the airline's headquarters. They flew down to San Francisco together, all 3 generations. Michael Torres accompanied them as their attorney. They were led into a conference room with a view of the bay, where Patricia Morrison waited with her head of legal, her VP of operations, and her director of human resources. Patricia stood when they entered, extending her hand. Mrs. Chen, Miss Chen, and Maya. Thank you for coming. I want to start by saying how deeply sorry I am for what you've experienced. Jennifer shook her hand, but her expression was cold. Sorry doesn't give my daughter back the weeks she spent thinking no one believed her. Sorry doesn't return the locket before we had to fight for it. You're absolutely right. And that's why we're here. We want to make this right.
How?
Helen asked bluntly. You're going to fire one person and think that fixes everything? The head of legal, Robert Chong, cleared his throat. We're prepared to offer a settlement. $200,000 placed in a trust for Maya's education, plus coverage of all legal fees. And, Michael asked, and a formal, public apology from the airline. And, Michael repeated. Robert looked uncomfortable. I'm not sure what else. Systemic change, Michael said. Because this isn't just about Maya. It's about every passenger who's been treated poorly and not believed. It's about a system that protects employees who shouldn't be protected and ignores complaints until they become lawsuits. Patricia Morrison leaned forward. What kind of changes are you thinking? Maya, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. You need a better way for people to complain. And when they complain, someone has to actually listen. And employees who are mean to people because of their skin color should be fired, not just told to be nicer. The room went quiet. Here was a 9-year-old, laying out exactly what a multi-billion-dollar corporation needed to do, and the adults in suits had no rebuttal. Patricia smiled slightly. You're right, Maya. You're absolutely right. Over the next 2 hours, they negotiated. Michael Torres was relentless, and the airline knew they had no leverage. The public relations nightmare was only getting worse. They needed this resolved. The final agreement included a settlement of $150,000 to Maya in a trust fund for college, plus full coverage of all legal fees. A formal, public apology from the CEO, not just a written statement, but a video message that would run on the airline's website and social media. Implementation of a new passenger complaint system with independent oversight, not just internal review. Mandatory quarterly anti-discrimination training for all employees, not just new hires, with real consequences for violations. An independent review board for employee misconduct allegations, including outside voices, not just airline representatives. Installation of security cameras in galleys and service areas to protect both employees and passengers. New protocols specifically for protecting unaccompanied minors and their belongings, including required documentation if crew needs to take custody of any passenger property. And the creation of the David Chen Memorial Fund, a program to provide travel assistance for families dealing with medical crises and loss, with Maya given input into how the fund would operate. When they left the meeting, Jennifer felt like she could finally breathe. But Maya's reaction was more measured. Is it enough? She asked her mother in the car. What do you mean, baby? All those rules and money and stuff. Does it actually change anything? Or will they just forget about it in a few months? Helen, from the front seat, turned around. That's why we stay vigilant. That's why we hold them accountable. Change doesn't happen once and then last forever. It's a constant fight. That sounds exhausting. It is, Helen agreed. But it's also necessary. Your dad understood that. And now you understand it too. Veronica's criminal trial was relatively quick. Faced with overwhelming evidence, including James's testimony, Carmen's video, Mr. Bernard's statement, and the fact that the locket had been found in her possession, her public defender advised her to take a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to felony theft and misdemeanor filing a false report. The judge sentenced her to 6 months in jail, suspended on condition of 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service, and restitution to Maya for the emotional distress caused. The judge also required Veronica to write a formal letter of apology to Maya. When it arrived, Jennifer opened it first to make sure it was appropriate before showing it to her daughter. The letter was exactly what you'd expect. Technically apologetic, but clearly written through gritted teeth. I apologize for my actions and the distress I caused. I made a poor decision, and I take full responsibility. No explanation. No real contrition. Just the minimum words required to satisfy the court order. Maya read it once and set it aside. She doesn't mean it. Probably not, Jennifer agreed. But she has to live with what she did. And you get to live knowing you stood up for yourself. The airline's internal investigation revealed more than anyone had expected. Veronica wasn't the only problem. 3 other flight attendants had multiple complaints about discriminatory behavior that had been dismissed or minimized. The review board uncovered a pattern of complaints being closed without proper investigation, especially when they came from minority passengers. 7 employees were ultimately terminated or resigned. The entire customer service training program was overhauled. And Patricia Morrison, to her credit, continued to meet quarterly with passenger advocacy groups to ensure the changes were actually being implemented. But the real impact was in the thousands of people who heard Maya's story and found their own courage. Social media flooded with stories of people who'd been treated poorly and stayed silent, who'd been discriminated against and thought there was no point in fighting back, who'd been told they were wrong or confused or lying when they knew the truth. Maya became, without really meaning to, a voice for all of them. 6 months after the flight, Maya testified before a congressional subcommittee on airline passenger rights. She was 10 years old by then, a little taller, a little more confident, but still fundamentally the same girl who'd clutched an empty velvet box and refused to accept that justice was impossible. She wore the locket to the testimony, touching it whenever she felt nervous. The congresspeople asked her questions about her experience, and she answered with the same clear, direct honesty that had characterized everything she'd done. My dad taught me that standing up for what's right is never easy, but it's always worth it, she said. And I think he was right. It wasn't easy. There were so many times I wanted to give up. But if I had, then Veronica would have won. And not just against me. Against every kid who thinks adults won't listen. Against every person who thinks they're too small or too young or too different to matter. She paused, and in that pause, you could hear the echoes of her father's voice, his lessons, his love. People shouldn't have to fight as hard as we did just to be believed. Just to get back something that was stolen. Just to be treated with basic respect. But until the world changes, we have to keep fighting. Because the alternative is to let the Veronicas win. And I won't do that. My dad didn't raise me to do that. The video of her testimony went viral. News outlets played clips. Schools showed it in assemblies. Parents showed it to their children as an example of courage and perseverance. Maya's science fair project, the one she'd been working on when all this started, had won first place at her school. She eventually expanded it into a full research project that won at the regional level too. Her study of aerodynamics and flight physics became the foundation for a children's book she wrote with her mother's help, Maya's Voice, How a Little Girl Learned to Fly. The book wasn't really about airplanes. It was about finding your voice when the world tries to silence you. About standing up even when you're scared. About truth and justice and the power that comes from refusing to be small. All the proceeds went to organizations that help children deal with grief and trauma, and to advocacy groups fighting discrimination. Maya started a YouTube channel with her mother called Ask Maya, where she answered questions from kids around the world dealing with their own challenges. Bullying, discrimination,
Loss. Fear.
she didn't have all the answers, but she had her own experience and her father's wisdom and a genuine desire to help others feel less alone. The channel exploded. Within 6 months, she had over 2 million subscribers. Within a year, she was getting recognized in airports and grocery stores. People would stop her to thank her, to tell her their own stories, to say that she'd inspired them to speak up about things they'd kept silent about for years. It was overwhelming sometimes. Maya was still just a kid, still just a 10-year-old who missed her dad and struggled with math homework and wanted to play with her friends. But she'd also become something more. A symbol. A reminder that courage didn't require age or size or power. Just truth and determination and the willingness to keep fighting when it would be easier to give up. 1 year after the flight, on the anniversary of the theft, Maya and her family returned to the airport. Same airline. Same route. San Francisco to Seattle. But everything was different now. They were greeted at check-in by a gate agent who recognized Maya immediately and asked for a photo. The airline had comped their tickets and upgraded them to first class, though Jennifer had initially refused until Patricia Morrison personally called to ask them to accept it as a gesture of gratitude for the changes Maya had inspired. At the gate, Mrs. Patterson was working again. She saw Maya, and her face lit up. "Well, look at you. You're famous now." Maya hugged her. "You were kind to me that day. Before everything. I remembered that. And you were braver than anyone I've ever met. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart." As they waited to board, Maya noticed a little boy, maybe 7 years old, wearing an unaccompanied minor badge. He was sitting alone, looking nervous, his leg bouncing with anxiety. Maya walked over and sat down next to him. "First time flying by yourself?" He nodded, not quite meeting her eyes. "I was scared my first time too. But you know what? Flying is amazing. Once you're up there, above the clouds, it's like nothing can touch you. Like you're free. What if something goes wrong? Then you ask for help. The flight attendants are supposed to help you. And if they don't, if anyone treats you badly, or takes something from you, or makes you feel small, you don't stay quiet. You speak up. You tell someone. You keep telling people until someone listens. Because your voice matters." "Okay." The little boy looked at her and seemed to really see her for the first time. "Are you that girl? The one from the news?" Maya smiled.
Yeah.
"I'm that girl. You were really brave. So are you. You're about to get on that plane all by yourself. That takes courage." They talked until it was time to board. Maya showed him her locket, told him a little about her dad, about the promise she'd made. By the time his row was called, the little boy was smiling. When it was time for Maya's family to board, they were the last ones on. The flight attendants greeted them warmly. No Veronica. No hostility. Just genuine kindness and professionalism. Maya's seat was by the window this time. As the plane taxied and then lifted into the air, she looked out at the world below, at San Francisco shrinking into a collection of tiny buildings and toy cars. She opened her locket, and the music played softly. Somewhere over the rainbow. Jennifer reached over and squeezed her hand. Helen, across the aisle, smiled at her with pride shining in her eyes. Maya touched the hologram, watching it shift between images. Her and her father. All their memories compressed into gold and glass and light. But there were new coordinates engraved now, ones she'd added herself. The courtroom. The congressional hearing. The airport where she'd testified. All the places she'd been brave. "I did it, Daddy," she whispered. "I kept my promise. I stood up. I didn't give up. And I'm going to keep doing it. For you.
For me.
For everyone who needs someone to show them it's possible." The plane leveled off, cruising at 35,000 feet. Maya closed her locket and looked out at the endless sky. Somewhere down there was Veronica, living with the consequences of her choices. Somewhere down there were millions of people who'd heard Maya's story and found something in it that changed them. But up here, Maya was flying, just like her father had always promised she would. The flight to Seattle was smooth and uneventful, which was exactly what Maya needed. Sometimes the best moments are the ones where nothing goes wrong, where you're just allowed to exist without fighting or proving or defending yourself. When they landed, Helen's friend was waiting to pick them up. They spent the weekend visiting, and on Sunday, they drove to a quiet park near the water. Jennifer had arranged something special, something Maya didn't know about. There was a small bench under a tree with a plaque that read, David Chen Memorial Bench, in honor of a man who taught his daughter to fly. Maya ran her fingers over the engraved letters, tears streaming down her face. But they weren't entirely sad tears. They were complicated tears. Grief and gratitude and love all mixed together. Is this okay? Jennifer asked nervously. I thought you'd want a place where you could come and feel close to him. It's perfect, Mom. They sat on the bench together, 3 generations of strong women, and watched the water. Maya told her grandmother and mother about the little boy at the airport, about how it felt to help someone else be brave. That's your dad's legacy, Jennifer said. Not just the locket. Not just the coordinates or the lessons. It's you, Maya. The person you're becoming. He'd be so proud. That night, back at the hotel, Maya recorded a video for her YouTube channel. She'd done dozens by now, but this one felt different. More important somehow. Hey, everyone. It's Maya.
I wanted to talk to you about something today.
About what happens after you win. Because I think a lot of people imagine that once you get justice, once the bad guys get punished and everyone apologizes and things change, that's the end of the story. Everything's better now. The end. But it's not really like that. Yes, I got my locket back. Yes, the flight attendant got in trouble. Yes, the airline made changes. But my dad is still dead. That didn't change. And there are still people out there who will treat you badly because of how you look or where you're from or how old you are. That didn't change either. So what was the point? Why fight so hard if the world is still unfair? I think the point is that every small fight makes the world a little less unfair. Every time someone stands up and refuses to be silent, it makes it easier for the next person to stand up too. Every time a company changes their rules because someone forced them to, those rules protect people who haven't even been born yet. My dad taught me to be brave.
But he also taught me to be smart.
And the smart thing is to understand that bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and doing the right thing anyway. It's about knowing you might not win and trying anyway because trying matters. I won my fight. But there are a million other fights happening right now. Kids being bullied. People being discriminated against. Truth being ignored because it's inconvenient. And those fights need fighters too. So, if you're watching this and you're dealing with something hard, something that feels impossible, I want you to know something. You're not alone. And you're not powerless. You have a voice and your voice matters, and sometimes that's all you need. A voice and the courage to use it. Don't let anyone make you feel small. Don't let anyone tell you that you're wrong when you know you're right. Don't let anyone steal from you, whether it's your property or your dignity or your truth, and get away with it. Be brave. Be smart. Be persistent. And if you fall down, get back up. If people don't believe you, find people who will. If the first door closes, find another door. Keep going until justice stops being something you hope for and starts being something you make happen. That's what my dad would have told you. That's what he taught me. And that's what I'm trying to do every day. Make him proud by being the person he believed I could be. Thanks for watching. And remember, you're mighty. Even when you don't feel like it. Especially when you don't feel like it. You're mighty, and your voice matters, and don't ever let anyone tell you different. She ended the recording and posted it. Within hours, it had hundreds of thousands of views. Within days, millions. The comment section filled with people sharing their own stories, their own fights, their own moments of finding courage they didn't know they had. A teacher in Texas printed out Maya's words and hung them on her classroom wall. A teenager in London watched the video before testifying against someone who'd assaulted her. A man in Mumbai showed it to his daughter and told her she could be anything she wanted to be. Ripples. Endless ripples spreading out from one 9-year-old girl who'd refused to stay silent. 2 years passed. Maya was 11 now, about to start 6th grade. She was taller, her face losing some of its childish roundness, her voice beginning to change in that awkward way of girls becoming teenagers. But her eyes were the same. Still her father's eyes. Still full of that particular combination of intelligence and determination that had carried her through the worst time of her life. The David Chin Memorial Fund had helped over 500 families with travel expenses during medical crises. Maya reviewed applications and helped decide who received aid. She took it seriously, reading each story carefully, understanding that behind every application was a family in pain, just like hers had been. The airline's changes had mostly stuck. The independent review board actually had teeth, and several employees had been disciplined or terminated for discriminatory behavior. The complaint system wasn't perfect, but it was better. And other airlines had started implementing similar changes, not out of altruism, but because they'd seen what happened when you ignored problems until they exploded. Veronica completed her probation. Maya saw a news article about it online. The woman had moved to a different state, taken a job in retail. She'd given one interview to a local newspaper where she'd said all the right words about learning from her mistakes and becoming a better person. Maya didn't know if she meant any of it. She decided it didn't really matter. Veronica would have to live with what she'd done. That was consequence enough. James, the flight attendant who'd finally found his courage, had left that airline and joined a different one. He'd become an advocate for better whistleblower protections in the industry. He and Maya exchanged emails occasionally. He always ended his messages the same way: "Thank you for being braver than I was." Mr. Bernard sent Maya a card on her birthday every year, always with the same message: "Proud of you, brave girl." Carmen, the paralegal who'd recorded that crucial video, ended up going to law school inspired by watching Michael Torres fight for Maya. She wanted to be that kind of attorney, the kind who actually helped people instead of just shuffling papers. Michael himself continued taking on cases that others wouldn't touch. Cases where the victims were poor or young or had the wrong color skin or the wrong accent. Cases where justice seemed impossible. He won more than he lost, and when people asked him why he kept doing it, he'd say, "Because a 9-year-old showed me that impossible is just another word for hard." Maya's YouTube channel had grown beyond anything she'd imagined. She had over 5 million subscribers now. She'd been invited to speak at schools, conferences, youth leadership seminars. She'd met senators and celebrities and activists. She'd been on talk shows and podcasts. She'd been profiled in magazines. But the most meaningful moments were the small ones. The emails from kids saying she'd helped them find the courage to tell someone they were being abused. The messages from parents saying they taught their children to be brave because of Maya's example. The handwritten letters from elderly people saying she'd restored their faith that young people could still change the world. On the 2-year anniversary of her father's death, Maya and Jennifer visited his grave. They did this every year, but this year felt different. Heavier somehow. Maya sat on the grass next to the headstone and opened her locket. The music played, tinny and beautiful. Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. "Hey, Daddy. I'm 11 now. Can you believe it? Mom says I'm getting too tall, that soon I'll be as tall as her. I kind of like that idea. Being tall enough to look her in the eye. So much has happened since you left. I wish you could have been here for it. I wish you could have seen me testify in Congress. I wish you could have met all the people who've helped us. I wish you could have been there when the airline finally admitted they were wrong. But I also think maybe you were there. Maybe not the way I want. Not where I can see you or hear you or hug you. But maybe in the courage you gave me. In the lessons you taught me. In the voice you helped me find. I kept my promise, Daddy. I wore your locket on my first solo flight. Well, technically Veronica stole it, so I wore an empty velvet box, but the spirit was there. And I was brave. So brave. Even when I was terrified. Even when adults didn't believe me. Even when it felt impossible. And I'm still being brave. Every day. Sometimes it's big brave, like speaking in front of hundreds of people. Sometimes it's small brave, like standing up to a mean kid at school or telling Mom when I'm not okay instead of pretending I'm fine. I think bravery is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. You taught me that even if you didn't use those exact words. I miss you. Every single day. Sometimes I'll see an airplane and think about calling you to tell you about it, and then I remember I can't. Or I'll ace a test and want to hear you say you're proud of me. Or I'll just be sitting at dinner and realize there's an empty chair that should have you in it. But I'm okay. We're okay. Mom and Grandma and me. We're figuring it out. We're building a life that has a dad-shaped hole in it, but we're filling the hole with memories and love and the things you taught us. I'm going to keep flying for you. Keep exploring. Keep standing up for what's right. Keep using my voice. Because that's what you wanted. That's what the locket was for. Not just to remember you, but to remember who I am because of you. I love you, Daddy. Forever and always. Up to the sky and back. She kissed her fingertips and pressed them to the headstone. Jennifer wrapped an arm around her shoulders, and they sat there together as the sun moved across the sky, casting long shadows through the trees.
Life went on.
It had to. Maya started 6th grade and joined the debate team. She made new friends and kept old ones. She got her first B+ in English and cried about it until her mother reminded her that she was human and humans weren't perfect. She got her period and felt embarrassed and grown up and scared all at once. She discovered she liked drawing and started sketching airplanes in the margins of her notebooks. She was growing up, becoming a teenager, learning that the world was more complicated than brave or cowardly, right or wrong, justice or injustice. Learning that sometimes good people did bad things and bad people sometimes showed unexpected kindness. Learning that fighting for what's right didn't always mean you won, but you still had to fight. But through it all, she wore the locket. Every single day. It had become part of her, this piece of gold and memory and promise. She'd touch it without thinking when she was nervous. She'd open it to hear the music when she felt sad. She'd look at the holographic photo when she needed to remember that she came from love, that she was made of her father's best dreams. One day, 3 years after the flight, Maya's school held a career day. Students could invite anyone they wanted to talk about their profession. Maya invited Michael Torres. He showed up in a sharp suit, carrying a briefcase, looking every inch the successful attorney. But when he talked to the 6th graders about his job, he didn't talk about courtrooms or lawsuits or billable hours.
He talked about justice.
About fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves. About how the law was supposed to protect everyone, but often only protected people with money and power. About how change happened when enough people refused to accept that this was just the way things were. I became a lawyer because I wanted to help people, he said. But I learned what that really meant from a client who was 9 years old. She taught me that justice isn't something that just happens. It's something you have to fight for. Every time. Without exception. And she taught me that courage doesn't care how old you are or how small you are or what you look like. Courage is about knowing what's right and refusing to let anyone tell you you're wrong. He looked at Maya, sitting in the 3rd row, and smiled. She's here today, actually. And I hope you all know how lucky you are to go to school with someone who changed the world before she was even 10 years old. The other students turned to look at Maya, and she felt her face flush. But she also felt proud. Not of the attention, but of what she'd done. Of who she'd become. After Michael finished, several students raised their hands to ask questions. Most were the typical career day questions. How long did you go to school? What's the hardest part of your job? How much money do you make? But one girl in the back, a quiet black girl named Jasmine who Maya knew got picked on sometimes, raised her hand and asked something different. Mr. Torres, what do you do when you fight really hard for something and you still lose? The room went quiet. Michael considered the question carefully. That's the best question anyone's asked me today. Honestly, losing hurts. Every time. But here's the thing about fighting for justice. Even when you lose the case, you win something else. You win the knowledge that you tried. You win the experience that makes you better for the next fight. And sometimes you win changes that aren't obvious right away. You plant seeds that grow later. Maya's case? We won. But I've had a lot of cases where we didn't win. Where the judge ruled against us, or the evidence wasn't enough, or the jury didn't believe my client. And every time it happens, I want to quit. I want to say, forget it. The system is broken. What's the point? But then I remember why I started doing this in the first place. Because somebody has to fight. Because if we all give up, then injustice wins by default. So I get up the next morning and I start on the next case. And maybe I lose that one too. But maybe I win. And maybe that win changes someone's life. He paused, then added, the real failure isn't losing. It's not fighting at all. After the presentation, Jasmine approached Maya in the hallway. That thing that happened to you on the plane, she said quietly. Did you ever want to just give up? Maya didn't have to think about her answer. Every single day. Sometimes every single hour. It felt impossible. Like no one would ever believe me. But you didn't give up.
No.
Because if I gave up, she won. And I couldn't let her win. Not because of pride or revenge or anything like that. But because if she won, it meant that bad people could just do bad things and get away with it as long as they were bigger or older or had more power. And I couldn't accept that. My dad didn't raise me to accept that. Jasmine nodded slowly. There's this girl who keeps taking my lunch money. She says if I tell anyone, she'll beat me up. And I believe her. She's bigger than me, and she's mean. But I thought, maybe if you could stand up to an adult who stole from you, maybe I could figure out how to stand up to her. Maya felt her heart squeeze. This was why it had all mattered. Not the news coverage or the settlement or the policy changes, though those were important. But this. One scared kid finding courage from another kid's story. Tell someone, Maya said firmly. Tell a teacher, tell your parents, tell the principal. Keep telling people until someone helps you. And if they don't help you the first time, tell them again. And again. Don't give up just because it's hard. What if they don't believe me? Then you find someone who will. There are good people out there, Jasmine. People who will help you. You just have to keep looking until you find them. Jasmine smiled, just a little. Okay, I'll try. Not try.
Do.
Promise me. I promise. 2 weeks later, Maya heard that Jasmine had reported the bully and that the school had actually taken it seriously. The girl was suspended, and Jasmine was finally eating lunch in peace. It was a small victory, but small victories mattered. They added up. They built on each other. They created a world where people believed kids, where justice was possible, where being small didn't mean being powerless. Years continued to pass. Maya entered high school and joined the speech and debate team, where her ability to articulate arguments and speak with confidence made her a star. She won state championships. She was recruited by top universities before she'd even finished sophomore year. But she never forgot where that confidence came from. Never forgot the terrified 9-year-old on a plane, fighting for something that seemed impossible. She gave a TED Talk at 16 about youth activism and the power of refusing to be silent. The video got 20 million views. A publisher approached her about writing a full memoir. She wasn't sure she was ready for that yet, but she didn't say no. Maybe someday. Jennifer watched her daughter grow into a powerful young woman and felt pride that was tinged with bittersweetness. David would have been so proud. Would have loved every minute of watching Maya become whoever she was meant to be. His absence was a constant ache, but Maya's presence was a constant reminder that love didn't die when people did. It transformed. It continued. It built legacies. Helen, now in her 70s and mostly recovered from her stroke, liked to tell anyone who'd listen about her granddaughter. That girl has changed the world, she'd say. And she's not even close to being done yet. And she was right. Maya had changed the world. Not single-handedly, not alone, but she'd been a catalyst.
A spark.
A voice that had rung out and been heard, and inspired others to raise their own voices. The airline industry had changed at least somewhat. Not perfectly, not completely, but measurably. Complaints were taken more seriously. Discriminatory behavior had consequences. Unaccompanied minors had better protections. It wasn't everything, but it was something. And something was better than nothing. But the bigger change was harder to quantify. It was in all the kids who'd heard Maya's story and learned that they didn't have to accept injustice just because they were young. In all the parents who'd been inspired to believe their children even when it was hard. In all the people who'd been treated poorly and decided to speak up instead of staying silent. Ripples upon ripples upon ripples, spreading out from one moment on one plane when one little girl said, "That's mine. Give it back." On Maya's 16th birthday, Jennifer gave her a special gift. It was a small wooden box, beautifully carved, with airplanes etched into the lid. "What is it?" Maya asked. "Open it." Inside were letters. Dozens of them. All addressed to Maya. All in her father's handwriting. Maya looked up at her mother, tears already forming. "What? How?" "Your father wrote them before he died. One for every birthday until you turn 18. One for your high school graduation. One for your college graduation. One for your wedding day, if you choose to get married. One for when you have your first child, if you choose to have children. One for your 30th birthday." He wanted to be there for all the big moments, and since he couldn't be physically, he found another way. Maya's hands shook as she pulled out the letter marked Sweet 16. "Should I read it now?" "That's up to you, baby. He wrote them for you. You get to decide when to read them." Maya carefully opened the envelope. Her father's handwriting, familiar and beloved, filled the page. "My dearest Maya Bird, if you're reading this, you're 16 years old. Sweet 16. I can't imagine what you look like now, but I bet you're beautiful. I bet you're tall and confident and so smart it scares people a little. I bet you still have my dimples and your mother's determination and that particular way of tilting your head when you're thinking hard about something. I'm sorry I'm not there to see it. Sorry I'm missing your first date and your driving lessons and all the fights you're probably having with your mom about curfew and clothes and all the other things teenagers fight with their parents about. I'm sorry I won't be there to meet your prom date and pretend to clean my gun while giving them the dad talk. But I hope, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you remember what I taught you.
Be brave.
Be kind. Be true to yourself. Stand up for what's right even when everyone else is sitting down. Use your voice, because your voice matters. By now you've probably learned that the world isn't fair. That good people suffer and bad people sometimes prosper and life doesn't always make sense. I hope you've also learned that fairness isn't something that just exists. It's something we create. Every day. Every choice. Every time we refuse to accept that this is just how things are. I love you, Maya. I loved you before you were born. I loved you from your first breath to my last. And I'll love you long after, in whatever comes next, in whatever form love takes when we're no longer here. Fly high, Maya Bird. Fly so high. All my love forever, Dad. Maya read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Then she carefully folded it and put it back in its envelope. She had more letters waiting. More messages from beyond the grave. More chances to hear her father's voice. Thank you, Mom. This is the best gift anyone could have given me. Jennifer hugged her daughter tight. Your dad loved you so much. Everything he did, everything he thought about, it all came back to you. Making sure you'd be okay. Making sure you'd know how much you were loved. That night, Maya updated her YouTube channel. She held up the locket to the camera, and it caught the light, the engraved airplanes dancing. Hey everyone. I'm 16 today. Which seems impossible because I swear I was 9 just yesterday. But time has this way of moving forward whether we're ready or not. I got a special gift today. Letters from my dad that he wrote before he died. One for every major milestone. And reading his words, hearing his voice in my head, it reminded me why I do what I do. Why I keep talking about that flight and that locket and that fight for justice. It's not because I want to be famous. It's not because I like attention. It's because I made a promise to my dad. To be brave. To stand up. To use my voice. And I'm keeping that promise. Every day. But it's also more than that. It's because I've learned something in the last 7 years. I've learned that every person has a choice. We can see something wrong and look away, or we can speak up. We can accept that this is just how things are, or we can fight to change it. We can be silent, or we can raise our voices until the whole world hears. I chose to speak up, and it changed my life. But more importantly, it changed other people's lives too. I get messages every day from people who've found their own courage, who've fought their own battles, who've refused to be silent. And that's the real legacy. Not what I did, but what you all did because I showed you it was possible. So, if you're watching this and you're dealing with something hard, here's what I want you to know. You have power. You have a voice. You have worth. And no one, no matter how big or important or intimidating they are, has the right to make you feel like you don't matter. Speak up. Stand up. Fight back. Not with violence or hatred, but with truth. With persistence. With the absolute refusal to let injustice win. And if you fall down, get back up. If people don't listen, make them listen. If the first door closes, find another door. Keep going until justice stops being a dream and starts being reality. That's what my dad taught me. That's what that flight attendant tried to take from me and failed. That's what I'm trying to teach you. Be brave. Be mighty.
Be you.
Thanks for watching. And happy birthday to me. She ended the video and posted it. Within hours, it had gone viral again. But this time, Maya barely noticed. She was too busy reading the letter from her father one more time, memorizing every word, holding on to the love that transcended death. The locket hung around her neck, warm against her skin. A reminder, a promise, a piece of her father that would stay with her forever. And as she lay in bed that night, exhausted from a day of birthday celebrations and emotional revelations, she touched the locket and whispered into the darkness. I'm keeping my promise, Daddy. Every day. For the rest of my life. I'm flying high. Somewhere over the rainbow. The music played. And though David Chen had been gone for 7 years, his love was as present as it had ever been. In his daughter's courage. In the lives she'd changed. In the world that was just a little bit better because a 9-year-old girl had refused to accept that this was just how things were. Justice wasn't just an abstract concept. It was a choice. A fight. A refusal to stay silent. And Maya Chen, 16 years old and still climbing, had made her choice long ago on a flight between San Francisco and Seattle. She'd chosen to fight.
To speak.
To stand. And she'd never stopped. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that your voice matters, that justice is possible, that courage doesn't require power or age or permission, share it. Because somewhere out there is a kid who needs to hear this. A person who's been treated unfairly and thinks there's no point in fighting back. A human being who's forgotten that they're mighty. Show them Maya's story. Remind them they're not alone. Be the voice that inspires someone else to find theirs. Because that's how we change the world. One voice at a time. One truth at a time. One brave moment at a time. Hit subscribe if you believe justice is worth fighting for. Comment below with your own story of finding courage when it mattered most. And remember, you're mighty. Even when you don't feel like it. Especially when you don't feel like it. Fly high.